Everything you have done to fix your sex life is the exact thing that killed it. I know how that lands. Hear me out, because once you see this, you will not be able to unsee it, and it will change the next 20 years of your marriage. The number one thing that kills sex between two people who love each other isn't lost attraction. It isn't age. It isn't boredom or weight or hormones or any of the 100 things you've been quietly blaming at 2 a.m. It's pressure, plain pressure. The constant low weight of one person needing something the other feels they keep failing to give. And here's the cruel twist nobody sees coming. That pressure almost always comes from the person who wants the sex the most, the one who misses it, the one trying the hardest to bring it back. You have been pressing down harder and harder on the gas pedal for years, with the car stuck in a ditch, and every push has only buried the wheels deeper in the mud. Let me show you what this looks like inside your own house, because you'll know every frame of it. You're the one who wants it. So you start reaching, a hand that slides a little lower than a friendly touch, a comment about how long it's been. You plan a nice dinner, you pour the wine, and the whole evening hums with one unspoken question, and your spouse feels that question land the second they sit down. And maybe nothing happens that night, and you roll over with your back a little stiff, and you don't say a word, but the silence has a temperature to it, and they feel that too. And in the morning, there's a coolness on you, a small wound you're carrying that they can read across the kitchen. So now your spouse isn't only dealing with their own tiredness, or their own body, or their own long day. They're managing your disappointment on top of all of it. Every touch you offer now carries the same question. Do you want sex tonight? And they have learned to brace for it before your hand even lands. Now turn it around to their side for a moment, because you have to understand what you're actually up against. The instant a person feels they have to want something, the wanting dies on the spot. The moment desire becomes a duty, it stops being desire and becomes a chore. Your spouse lies there feeling like they owe you a debt their body refuses to pay. And the harder you press for that payment, the further their body backs away. Because no human being in the history of the world has ever been talked into wanting something by being reminded they're failing to provide it. So you push a little harder, because you're hurting and you're lonely. And they pull back a little further because they're suffocating. And around it goes, the two of you locked in a slow dance where every single move you make to get closer is the exact move shoving them further out of reach. I'm Dr. Joyce McCarthy, a couples intimacy coach here in the U.S., and I have watched this one quiet mistake hollow out more good marriages than affairs ever have. Two people who still love each other, still attracted to each other, still aching to want each other. And they've accidentally built a trap that neither of them knows how to climb out of. By the time we're done tonight, you're going to see the trap clearly, and you're going to be holding the one key that opens it. First, do one thing for me. In the comments, tell me which one you are. Type pursuer if you're the one who reaches and aches and waits. Type frozen if you're the one who feels the weight and pulls away. There's no shame in either, and you'll see in about 2 seconds that the comments are split right down the middle. Thousands of people on each side, every one of them feeling exactly as alone as you feel right now. Leave your word, then come back to me, because what I say next is going to hit you differently depending on which one you are. And before I show you the way out, Look honestly at everything you have already tried, because I'd wager you've tried plenty. You scheduled it, picked a night, wrote it on the calendar like a chore, and it felt about as sexy as a dental cleaning. You had the tearful talk, the one where you laid out how long it's been and how unwanted you feel, and it ended in a fight or in a guilty, joyless attempt that made everything worse. You tried to spice it up, the new outfit, the weekend trip, the toy in the drawer, only to feel lonelier when even that didn't move them. Maybe you got angry. Maybe you threatened, out loud or just quietly inside your own head, to go find it somewhere else. And every single one of those moves, every last one, was more pressure wearing a different mask. The schedule was pressure. The talk was pressure. The spicing up was pressure with better lighting. The threat was pressure with a knife in its hand. You have been treating a pressure problem with stronger and stronger doses of pressure, and then lying awake wondering why the patient keeps getting sicker. All right, here is the thing you have to understand about desire, and it flips this whole problem upside down. Desire cannot be commanded. You can command nearly anything else in a marriage. You can ask your spouse to take out the trash, call the plumber, show up at the dinner on time. But you cannot order a person to want you, any more than you can order yourself to be hungry or order yourself to fall asleep on command. The wanting either rises up on its own or it doesn't come at all. And the single fastest way to guarantee it never comes is to make a person feel they're being graded on whether it does. Think about the last night you couldn't sleep. The harder you fought to force yourself under, the more wide awake you became, until the trying itself was the very thing keeping you staring at the ceiling. Desire works exactly the same way. The trying is the poison. The effort to produce the wanting is the thing strangling the wanting in its crib. And every hint you drop, every heavy sigh, every "it's been 3 weeks," every wounded silence at bedtime is more pressure, more grading, more proof to your spouse's body that the bedroom has become a test they keep on failing. Here's the rule sitting underneath all of it, and I want you to write it on your heart. You cannot get an enthusiastic yes from a person who doesn't feel free to say no. As long as your spouse believes that saying no costs them something, that it buys them your sulk, your cold shoulder, 3 days of distance, then their yes was never truly a yes in the first place. It was a surrender. It was them giving in to make the bad feelings stop. And a body that is surrendering cannot also be desiring. Those two things cannot live in the same skin at the same moment. So every single time you made saying no expensive, you quietly made saying yes meaningless. And there's a reason this runs deeper than hurt feelings, a reason buried all the way down in the body. Your body has 2 settings it can never run at the same time. One is the alarm setting, the one that fires the instant you sense a threat, the one that floods you with stress chemicals and braces you to fight or to run. The other is the setting where arousal lives, the calm, open, unguarded setting where the body softens and warms and reaches. They are opposites. You cannot be braced against a threat and open to pleasure in the very same moment. It is not a choice. It is physically impossible. Now here is what that means in your bedroom. When your spouse feels pressured, their body reads that pressure as a threat. A small one, but a threat all the same. The threat of failing you, of disappointing you, of another cold and wounded night. And the second their body flips into that alarm setting, it does the only thing it knows how to do. It shuts the wanting off. It powers desire all the way down to deal with the danger first. So your spouse is not choosing to feel nothing. Their body is choosing it for them, automatically. The same way your hand leaves a hot stove before you've even decided to move it. You have been trying to seduce a nervous system that you accidentally put on high alert. It was never going to work. It physically could not work. And I have to take you one layer deeper because this is where the real damage lives. The pressure your spouse feels isn't only the pressure to have sex. It is the whole weight of your need. When the person you love makes their happiness, their confidence, their entire sense of being a man or a woman hang on whether you want them on a given night, that is a crushing thing to set down on another human being. Your spouse stops feeling desired and starts feeling responsible. Responsible for your mood, your ego, your sense of worth as a person. And here is a truth as old as marriage itself. Nobody can feel desire from underneath a weight. Desire needs lightness. It needs play. It needs to feel free and a little reckless. And there is nothing free, nothing playful, nothing light about climbing into bed already braced to manage another grown person's heartbreak. Somewhere along the way, sex in your house quietly stopped being about pleasure and turned into a job. The job of keeping you from feeling rejected. And not one person on earth has ever wanted to climb into bed to clock in for that job. If you found yourself anywhere in the last few minutes, do me a kindness and tap subscribe. Here's my honest reason for asking. Almost no one is willing to look the hurting person in the eye and tell them they're part of what's keeping the hurt alive. It's easier to hand you another trick to spice things up and wave you off. I won't do that to you, because the tricks won't save your marriage, and the truth just might. So if you want the rest of the truth, week after week, plainly, from somebody who is squarely in your corner, then subscribe and let's keep going. You and the person you love have far too many good years left to spend them locked inside this trap. Okay, now the part you came here for. The one thing that brings it back. And I'll warn you ahead of time, it is going to feel like the most backward advice you have ever been given, because it is the exact opposite of everything your panic is screaming at you to do. You take sex off the table, completely, on purpose. You say out loud and clearly that the two of you are not going to have sex for a while, and you mean every word of it. I can feel you flinching from here. You're thinking, Joyce, I came to you because we already aren't having sex, and now you want me to make it official? But look at what actually happens when you do this. The reason your spouse's body has stayed frozen all this time is that the pressure never once lets up. Every hug, every nice dinner, every lingering glance carries that live wire of expectation. Their body never gets to stand down, never gets to feel safe, never gets a single hour off the alert. So you take the pressure away, all of it, deliberately, and for the first time in years, their nervous system finally exhales. The threat is gone. The test is canceled. The bedroom stops being a place where they can fail you. And a body that finally feels safe is the only kind of body that can ever begin to want again. You see the paradox now? The pressure was the predator. The wanting was the prey. And the prey will not come out into the open clearing as long as the predator is still standing in the field. So you remove the predator entirely, and you wait, and you let the timid thing come out on its own terms, in its own time, which is the only way it was ever going to come out at all. You stop hunting desire, and that is the precise moment desire stops hiding from you. Here's exactly how you do it, and every piece of this counts. First, you say it plainly, the two of you together. We are taking sex off the table for a while. No pressure, no expectation, no keeping score. The relief your spouse feels from that one sentence is bigger than you can possibly imagine, because for the first time in years, they know with total certainty that touch is not a trap anymore. That dread that has hung over every hug, the "what if this turns into something I'll have to refuse," finally goes silent. Second, and this is the hardest part for you, you keep touching them, but you strip every ounce of agenda out of it. You hold their hand, you hug them long and slow, you rub their shoulders, and then you get up and walk away to make the tea. And you do not sulk when it goes nowhere, because it isn't going anywhere. That was the entire agreement. And the very second your face falls or your shoulders slump, the pressure comes flooding right back in, and you have wrecked all the safety you just built. Your spouse is watching you far more closely than you realize to find out whether you can truly touch them without wanting something in return. The day they finally believe that you can is the day their body starts to thaw. Third, you let the wanting be slow, and you let it arrive second. For a great many people, desire does not show up first and lead them to their partner. It shows up after the closeness has already begun, after the safety, after the warmth has been sitting in the room a while. So you stop waiting for your spouse to suddenly feel a spark and come running across the house. That is not how their wanting works anymore, if it ever truly did. You build the safety first, with no agenda underneath it, and the spark catches later, downstream, the way it was always designed to. Fourth, and hear me carefully, you cannot use any of this as a trick. If you take sex off the table as a sneaky little strategy, pulling back so that they'll finally chase you, then it isn't safety at all. It's just pressure wearing a clever disguise, and your spouse will smell it on you in a heartbeat. Because a person who has been managing your moods for years can feel the difference between you genuinely letting go and you merely pretending to. This only works when you actually surrender the outcome. When you decide that even if the wanting takes months, even if it's a long, quiet winter, you will keep loving them with open hands the whole way through. The honesty of it is the medicine. The manipulation poisons it. Fifth, and this one is for you alone, the pursuer. You have to take your own sense of worth out of your spouse's hands. As long as your confidence as a man or a woman rises and falls on whether they want you tonight, you will leak pressure, however skillfully you try to hide it, because they will feel the desperation humming underneath the kindness. So go build a life that makes you feel alive and valuable, all on your own. Pick up the passion you set down years ago. Get strong, get interesting, become a person worth wanting again, not by chasing, but by standing on your own 2 feet, lit up from the inside. There are very few things on this earth more attractive than a partner who has stopped needing you to prove their worth for them. And if you're the frozen one, the one who typed that word in the comments, you have a part in this too. And I won't let you off the hook entirely because I respect you too much for that. Your freezing was never a character flaw, and it was never coldness, and you can lay down the guilt over it tonight, because your body did exactly what any pressured body does. But here is your job now, the moment the pressure lifts. You have to get honest about what's underneath your no. For a lot of you, it was never truly about not wanting your spouse at all. It was about feeling unsafe or unseen or quietly resentful over something that has nothing to do with the bedroom, a load you've carried alone for years, a hurt that never once got spoken. So while your spouse is learning to stop pressing, you have to find the courage to say the true thing out loud, to name the resentment instead of letting it sit there and rot the wanting out of you from the inside. And when the safety does return, and you feel even the faintest flicker of something stir, you have to be willing to lean toward it instead of slamming the door shut out of pure old habit. A flicker is not a demand on you. You are allowed to follow it and see where it wants to go. Now, a fair question is rising in some of you. Joyce, if we take sex off the table, how on earth does it ever get back on? And here's the answer. Because the bridge back is every bit as important as the break. You do not announce its return, and you do not put it back on the calendar like an appointment. Because the second you do, the pressure walks right back through the door you worked so hard to close. Instead, you let the touching deepen on its own. One night, the hug lasts longer than it used to. A kiss lingers where it once would have landed and left. You follow what's actually alive between you in the moment, with no plan to arrive anywhere in particular, and you let one thing lead to another only if it genuinely, truly does, with both of you free to stop at any point and have that be perfectly fine. That freedom to stop at any moment is the very thing that keeps it safe. And if a night of slow, easy touching ends with the two of you simply falling asleep wrapped up together, you call that a complete success, not a failed attempt. Because the instant you start grading it again, you have set the test right back down in the middle of the room. You are not trying to claw your way back to some finish line. You are learning together to wander with no finish line at all. And that wandering, that aimless, unhurried, pressureless wandering, is the exact thing that wakes desire back up out of its long sleep. I had a couple from Asheville, North Carolina, married 30 years, and the husband came to me an absolute wreck. He had been the pursuer for a solid decade, and the harder he chased, the colder it got. And he had fully convinced himself that his wife had simply stopped loving him. I told him to do the single hardest thing I ever ask of anyone. Stop. Stop reaching, stop hinting, stop sulking, take it all off the table, and just love her with open hands and no agenda for 90 days. He thought I had lost my mind. He thought I was telling him to give up and lose her. But he was desperate enough to try anything once, and he told me later that for the first 3 weeks, it nearly broke him, because the wanting was still alive in him, and he had to sit in the same bed with it and not act on it. But somewhere in that 4th week, he noticed his wife had started touching him, a hand on his back as she passed behind him, sitting a few inches closer on the couch. And then he did the bravest thing of the whole 90 days. He noticed it, and he did absolutely nothing. And he let her keep on coming. By the 6th week, she was the one reaching for him in the dark. After 10 long years of him chasing her, All it ever took was for him to stop running so that she finally had the room to turn around and find him standing there. And his wife told me something afterward that I will carry for the rest of my life. She said, "For 10 years I felt like prey. And the moment he stopped hunting me, I remembered that I wanted him." The wanting had been there the entire time. It had only been buried alive under the weight of his need. And she could not feel a single ounce of it until he finally lifted that weight up off her chest. So here is what I want you to carry to bed with you tonight. Your sex life did not die because the love ran out, or because your bodies got old, or because the desire packed up and left town. It went quiet because it was being slowly crushed under a pressure that the one who loved it most kept piling on year after year with the very best intentions in the world. And that means the cure was never to push harder. It was never to try more. The cure is to lift the weight, to clear every bit of the pressure out of the room and let your spouse's body remember, in safety, in its own time, that it was never once broken. It was only braced. You stop chasing the wanting, and the wanting, finally free, finally safe, walks right back into the room on its own 2 feet. And when it finally does, you will understand something that should have been plain all along. It was never gone. It was only waiting the whole time for the room to feel safe enough to walk back into, and for you to stop standing in the doorway with your hand out, asking. Do one last thing for me before you go. If this cracked something open in you tonight, give it a like so it reaches the next person lying awake and aching beside a spouse they're certain has stopped wanting them, when the truth is they've only been pressing too hard on a frightened heart. And then send it to one friend, the one who quietly confides that things have gone cold at home, who cannot understand why the harder they try, the worse it keeps getting. Send it with 4 little words. This made me think of you. You might just be handing them back a marriage they had already started to mourn. Stop hunting tonight. Lift the weight off their chest and watch what finds its own way home to you. I'll see you next time.